Traders, how are you? With Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Trump was just had an attempted assassination. Let's go ahead and get started. Just uploading the Spanish video here. Forgot to do that while I record the video, but I don't know if you guys saw the video. I don't care what side you're on. Nobody should ever be assassinated. Everybody deserves the right to live. But did you see him just stand there? He was getting shot at, and he's just standing there, like not afraid. And then after, obviously, he got down. The Secret Service comes, covers him, and he's like, nah, get off me. Fight. I doesn't matter who you're voting for. I always try to stay apolitical, but I don't think you realize how bad it's going to get at the end of the year. Remember in 2020, I believe it was the second week or third week of December 2020. For those of you guys that have been following me for a while, I told you the next 10 years, we're going to have economic problems, social problems, environmental problems, catastrophes, all kinds of things the next 10 years. So prepare yourself, because Conspiracy Marcello seems to be right. All right, back to the news. Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve in the United States, which is the central bank, said that he was placing greater attention to when to cut interest rates on Tuesday as growth is starting to slow down, the economy starting to cool. Remember that interest rates are the single most important thing in the economy due to the fact that the United States, still being the largest economy in the world, is almost 70%, almost 70% consumer spending. So literally almost 70% of the economy is you and I going out and buying stuff. And that obviously is directly tied to the interest rates, because you and I buying stuff affects what we can afford based on what the interest rates are, right? If you have a 2% interest rate or a 3% interest rate, you can literally buy 2 houses. Whereas now when interest rates are 6, 7, 8%, you can't even afford 1 house, especially since the price of the houses keep going up. So super, super important. If they do cut the rates, there's actually an indicator in regards to unemployment that, according to the rule that the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, uses, we technically are already in a recession. I'll tell you guys that in just a second. Markets in the U.S., all positive. Canada, the Communist Republic of Canada, also positive. S&P 500 hit its 25th record close for the year. The NASDAQ hit its 6th record close of the year. And remember what I explained to you guys before in regards to the weighting of the stocks in the stock market. What's going on is we have a really small group of these hyper big companies like Nvidia and Apple and Tesla, all these really big guys. Obviously, I'm missing a few there off the top of my head, but they're all going up, while the rest of the stock market is not going up. So literally a literal handful of stocks are the only ones that are going up, hitting record highs, while the rest of the stock market really isn't doing that well. So the news is kind of like, oh, you know, things are great, the stock market's going up, another record high. But in reality, it's really not doing that well when we actually look inside of what's going on in regards to the numbers, because most stocks outside of those big, meaty tech companies are not doing well. European markets are mostly higher as well. Looks like the Swiss markets was the biggest winner. Russia, the biggest loser. Latin America, Bovespa, which is the largest market in Latin America, they went up over 2%. Africa and the Middle East is mixed, while the far, far east, Australia, Asia, that whole area is generally higher, with the Hang Seng and Hong Kong being most positive of all. Bitcoin in that department, the last few weeks has been not very good for Bitcoin. The reason why is because the Federal Criminal Police Office in Germany has sold $2.2 billion in Bitcoin. So for the week, Bitcoin is down again 2.2%. It's just a touch over 58,000 for the week as of Saturday morning. Obviously, super volatile. So by the time you guys see this video on Sunday or Monday, it's going to be a little bit different. But they're literally selling hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin, and that's the reason why we had those markets go down. Commodities and energy. Crude overall is negative. This is due to the expectation that the demand was going to be lower after Hurricane Beryl storms into Texas as a Category 1 storm, and obviously going all through the whole right side of, not the right side, mostly the center, right? It's kind of going in the middle of the country and then leaning to the right, even though it's in the video. I think it's this way, leaning to the right. So crude went down 1.15% to 82.21. Brent, which is the international crude, went down 1.77% to 85.03. India and Russia agree to a long-term uranium supply pact. The reason why is because India wants that nuclear energy for one of their southern states. So it looks like even India and Russia are starting to get cozy. And gold for the week went up 0.92% to 2,411, while silver went down over 1% to $30.84. Financial and banking news, China. Their inflation was narrowly missed expectations, even though it's lower than what was expected. So what was expected was 0.4%, and it went up only 0.2%. So there's some signs now that the Chinese economy also isn't doing as well, even though the rise in inflation, I shouldn't phrase it that way. I should phrase that the Chinese economy is starting to slow down a little bit as well. Part of the reason why the inflation is starting to come down less than expected. Unemployment rate in the United States jumped to a 4-year high, triggering the Fed's dreaded SAM rule. This is one that I was mentioning to you just a moment ago, SAHM. That technically means that we're already in a recession, but things are going to get worse. Don't worry. Don't worry, guys. Things are going to get worse. Monthly inflation rate dipped in June for the first time in 4 years. The Fed now is more likely to start lowering rates later this year. We have the lowest level in the last 3 years, and the all-item index went down 3.3% in May. The shelter component, rent, what we have to pay for, most of us, is the smallest increase since August of 2021. So again, that's another indicator that the economy is starting to slow down a little bit in the United States. Economic news, Peru's economy is blasting through expectations. They grew 5.28% on a yearly basis from April. It's the highest rate in 32 months. Despite overall resilience in the economy, the consumer discretionary environment, so basically as consumers, as people, you and I have certain things that we have to pay for. Rent, food, our car payments, those kind of things. Everything that's after that isn't a requirement is considered discretionary, right? Go buy an iPhone, go buy, super expensive Five Guys, that's $25 a person. If you want the Five Guys story? Let me know if you want the Five Guys story again, the inflation. I was in the US recently. I went to Chipotle. I remember just a few years ago, I used to be able to get a Chipotle, get a $10 bowl. Now it's like $20, $23. It's unbelievable. Anyway, the consumer spending fell to an 8-month low, while the consumer discretionary environment at the end of June was 7% lower than the previous period. And high prices are starting to weigh on Americans. Obviously, that's the situation with the inflation. There's like a coffee's like $7 now, $8. Anyway, let me know in the comments if you guys are sharing that as well. I think I mentioned this last week. There was a guy who uploaded something on TikTok where he bought the same 45 items. And I believe 4 years ago or 5 years ago, it was like $141. And now it's $445. It's just, and they try to convince you the inflation rate is only 3-4%, 5%, 6%. It's more like 100% a year. U.S. Labor Department is saying that producer price index rose 0.2% in June. So even though the overall inflation is starting to come at multi-year lows, the producer index, which is where they produce things, right, products and services, is still kind of inching up quite a bit. Corporate news, Tesla, they went up 3.71% on Tuesday after Morgan Stanley stuck its overweight rating on Tesla. They have 15% market in the world, 50% market share in the world when it comes to electric vehicles. 15 in the US, 50 in the world. Make sure I said that right. The stock now is on a 10th straight positive day. They erased all of the negative amount that they had for the year. They're still down 3% for the year because it went back down a little bit, but the stock is up almost 41% in the last 3 months. Apple as well hit another all-time high. It's the 6th record close going back to Monday, July 1st. And if their was ever an indication that things are going to go sideways soon, it's the fact that everything is hitting record highs over and over and over again. Apple, the stock market, Nvidia, all these guys, right? It's called, there's a certain word for that. I forgot the name for it. It'll come to me in just a second, but it's over exuberance essentially, right? Everybody kind of thinks everything is great and all of a sudden just the rug is going to get pulled out. In technology, Samsung launched a Galaxy Ring to be able to go ahead and start incorporating all of their smart things. This is going to be called smart rings, where it has a sensor in your ring where it's going to monitor your health. They'll probably share that with AI and Google to try to sell you things you don't need. And investment news, the Chinese maker BYD, which is an EV, electric vehicle car maker, the largest in the world, they bought 20% stake in a company called Rever Automotive in Thailand. It's the largest market for the company outside of China, and they have a 46% market share there. International events, I didn't mention this in the beginning. In Barcelona, there's problems with tourism now that the locals are attacking tourists. They sprayed travelers with water guns and canned drinks while shouting, "Tourists go home." I don't know if you know this, where gringo came from, right? White people, gringo from America. But basically in Central America, I forgot what country it's from, they were saying the military in the United States, they wear green military outfits. So they were saying green go, right? So like, get out of here, green, gringo. So I thought that was interesting. And the U.S. National Weather Service is advising for a record heat wave in the U.S. West Coast. 36 million people, or about 10% of the country, are under excessive heat warnings. Las Vegas hit 120 degrees, an all-time record, while the Death Valley in California is expected to hit 130 degrees Fahrenheit or 54 degrees Celsius. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and remember, the preppers were right.